Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 611 Films podcast. I am one of the hosts, Neil McKay.
And I'm also one of the hosts, David Groves.
So one of the things Dave and myself were talking about what would be fun for these podcasts if we just picked, something like 3 scenes or 5 scenes or, top 3, top 5 or something of a genre or a particular filmmaker or this, that, or the other. And then just kind of, why do we like them? And just talking about those kinds, just kind of a fun little thing. So what are we doing, Dave? We're going to do one of those today.
Yeah, I think today, okay, so because of the Oscars and obviously I think, and I don't even mean to speak for you, but I do think that we've taken a lot from Mr. Quentin Tarantino, the 90s director guy that shot up with that like early 90s directors, Robert Rodriguez, Soderbergh, Kevin Smith. He just came into the fold and blew everyone away with how he made movies. So I thought it would be fun after the Oscars, and we'll go into other directors. Like the fun idea would be talking about our 3 favorite scenes of Tarantino. Now, here's the deal. We originally had kind of planned this as maybe it'd be the 3 of our favorite films of his, which could differ, and we could just kind of say those at the very end. But what's more interesting possibly is what are our top 3 favorite scenes of his, and whether they might have impacted us in as far as filmmakers. Like, what do we take from those scenes, or what have we kind of used? Or, Tarantino's the master of taking all the stuff he's watched and seen and then kind of making it his own. So I figured that would be kind of cool.
And so I think it's apropos that we kind of landed on Tarantino for our first one to kind of go over the first one. We're going to pick some scenes because I think correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but I would say that he's probably the guy that you and I are both like, yep, like that. We have our own kind of filmmakers that we draw a lot of influence from,
Right.
our respective lists. I'm in more of the weird cerebral kind of stuff, and I know you're kind of big into the dialogue action-y stuff, but we always we can both gravitate towards Tarantino and be like, yeah, that's a lot of our favorite movies are his. So this just feels like a good why him, or why start with
it feels
one?
like a good kind of director to kind of start with, and then I think we'll definitely go down the line and just find other directors. So once a month or every couple weeks, few weeks, whatever, one episode is just going to be devoted to one director. And we're just going to talk about their scenes and obviously the movies, and just kind of go into their style or how they did things, how it impacted us, I think is always a good thing.
Yeah.
But I first want to kind of start with, I guess, the idea of Tarantino. And for me specifically, because I know there was a lot of this. I think I saw Pulp Fiction very first, and I was still in high school when I saw it. And I do remember thinking, that is the strangest movie I've ever seen. I really liked it, but I didn't know why I liked it. I didn't know what it was. Again, I think it was like 14, maybe 15 even. So I see Pulp Fiction, and obviously it gets to that point with Bruce Willis and Ving Rhames, and they're in a kind of a basement dungeon of a pawn shop. And I was just like, what is going on right now? Now, I'm not saying that's one of my favorite scenes. I just remember being a little freaked out. It was just so weird. The movie itself was just so strange. And it took me till like 3, 4, 5 years into college, I think. So I'd never seen Reservoir Dogs. I didn't know anything about that indie world. So what was I think just to start this, like, do you remember seeing Reservoir Dogs first, or did you see Pulp Fiction
No,
first?
I think it was the same for me, that I saw Pulp Fiction first, and
Yeah.
and I also had kind of a very wow, I've never seen anything like this before. It was just it was different, and the thing that really threw me for a loop was just the nonlinear storytelling, because at that time that was pretty fresh. Like, you didn't see, I mean, you would see things kind of not told in chronological order, but this was like like it was like a microcosm, I mean, they're showing you, the scene the day before, and it wasn't like, a flashback or something like that. It was like, this is the story. It's just, somebody mis
Yeah, that's
mismatched all the
true. I
scenes
think,
or
yeah,
something.
I mean, that's what he's known for. So, you know, whether it's sort of in that thing where they don't do it linear and then just do flashbacks. He's just like, it's just gonna jump around the entire time,
Right,
which
right,
was
and
just weird and cool. And I don't really know or think I had seen anything like that. Again, my childhood was Hollywood driven, you know, comedies, action films, stuff like that. So watching a Tarantino, like watching Pulp Fiction for the first time as a young teenager, I I, I didn't even know what to think of it. Again, I
yeah.
think I knew I liked it. I knew there was something about it that was just so cool and weird. But that's the only word I could keep using. It's like, yeah, it was kind of weird. When my friends would say, "Hey, have you seen Pulp Fiction?" I'd be like, "Yeah, it was kind of weird. I don't get it," because I just wasn't used to that. I wasn't used to this
Mm.
kind of storytelling or a lot of dialogue and talky stuff. And then you had these big actors. You know, you had Bruce Willis in it. Like I'm watching Die Hard 2 one second, and then I'm watching Bruce Willis in Pulp Fiction the next. It's a different character for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then when it came out, of course, then you had everybody that trying to rip it off and imitate it. And I mean, I remember it was like, oh, how do you what else is like this? So then we would start, oh, he wrote this, and someone else. It's not he didn't direct it, but like True Romance and Killing Zoe, and like it's like, oh, let's go check that out. And so then it was like
Yeah.
everybody was trying to find what else is like this, like what
Yeah,
else is
what else has this guy done?
what else? Yeah.
And then it was funny too because I think I went to the theater with some buddies like a year. Like he had a scene, he did a scene in this movie. It was small, it didn't do well at all. It was called Four Rooms.
Oh yeah, yeah,
But a
yeah.
lot of the 90s directors got and did a bit in this movie.
I think that was an underrated movie, to be honest. And
I'd
the one
have to
he was
go
in.
back and see it. I don't remember if I don't know if I really liked it or didn't like it. Again, at the time, it was just this weird movie. Like, oh, this is just
It
kind of
was it was ve-
strange.
his the one he was in with Bruce Willis actually was I think the better of the because it was like a
It was like the last, I think, storyline,
yeah it was yeah
right?
because it was like what was the word I'm looking for, where they have like three or four mini stories within the that have like nothing to do with each other, and yeah, it was the last one.
Yeah, it was like an
um
anthology
Yeah,
kind
and
of
I think
movie.
they were trying to recreate an Alfred Hitchcock Presents episode, where the guy would click the lighter 10 times, and if he didn't get the flame 10 times in a row, he got his finger cut off. And so they were
Yeah.
like
Oh,
drunk in
yeah.
a
Spoiler
hotel.
alert. But 25 years later, yeah, and that was like the very end of the movie. Like that's how it happened. Like I think it like cuts right
Well, I
from the
didn't
end of the
say
movie.
what who won the bet or not. So,
Right. Well,
but
yeah,
anyway, that's the
you'd have to
premise.
go
But
see it.
but
But I do think like I think I went to so I got to Mason, so I got to college and this was 99. So every movie in 99 we'll probably do on this podcast a 1999 movie episode and just go into that specifically. But that's where things like the gears and the wheels in my head definitely started cranking and spinning and all that stuff of oh, like there's so many different kinds of films. It's not just Michael Bay and action movies and kung fu stuff. There's I don't know. I guess it was just opening the world with Fight Club, American Beauty, and all those different films. So I went back and I'm sure there was a night in my dorm or someone's dorm where we went and rewatched Reservoir Dogs, or someone had it on VHS tape. Like DVD still wasn't out just yet. And then I saw that for like the first time. And I was just like, this movie is awesome. Like, I love that. I think it was probably because it was more of a crime kind of thriller, but it was very talky. It was a lot funnier, I guess you could say.
mhm.
To me, it was funnier than like a Pulp Fiction. And again, that humor, like it was one of those repeated viewings where it just got better and better,
Yeah.
I think.
Now, a lot of people, you have your detractors and people that don't like Tarantino. They say he's a ripoff artist. What do you kind of think of that? Because he does, you could tell
Yeah,
he's got a lot of influences, and you can see
I've
those
had,
influences.
oh, totally. I've had that debate with other friends numerous times. I've had it with people in college, out of college, even out here with other people. And My personal feeling has always been that yes and no. I think it's sort of taking it from one way, like you take it too far. Like the nerdy kids that love Tarantino, that think he's the god, and the violence isn't that big of a deal. And then you've got the other like group of people that are like, ooh, like why does he have to be so violent? And it's all gratuitous and it's all crazy, and he's just, and it's like, well, he said it himself in one interview with a woman where it was like right after Kill Bill, and he's like, "Cause it's fun, because people like it, because if you can do violence in film and you can do it well, people are enthralled by it." And we haven't really not we I think he was saying something. We've been doing this for years. Violence in movies has been around for years. So is it too gratuitous? Is it too this that? I've always kind of just felt kind of in the middle of. I think he's making it his own, as always. But there's how else do you make movies? You rip off things you've already seen before.
Yeah. Well, right. Cause yeah, you're going to get your influence from something. And yeah, I mean, and that's how I kind of, I look at it too, is like, cause I look at my, because you and I are filmmakers. So I look at some stuff, that I've done and I'm like, am I, ripping this person off, or did I copy this movie inadvertently? But it's sort of like, no, I mean, if you're doing it your own way and you're with your own voice, I mean, unless you're blatantly like plagiarizing something, I mean, so you see his movies, and I know, I mean, I'm sure there's like YouTube clips of they're comparing, shot for shot stuff from
Oh
his
yeah,
movies
yeah.
to
There's
other things.
westerns, there's
Yeah.
samurai, kung fu, black exploitation.
Mm,
There are so many movies where it's like that shot or that look or that thing that he just
exactly.
did
Yeah.
was exactly kind of like that.
But
But
it's like,
again, it's
okay.
his own story that he's written.
That
Uh,
he's weaving in and I mean, and that's not just Tarantino. I mean, you could do the same thing with Star Wars. I mean, that was all pulled from like sci-fi movies from the 50s and 60s. Like characters and shots and things like that. So it's like, I mean, everybody does it sort of. I mean,
Everybody does it, and not to mention too, like if you look at today's films and you see that we're on a track to basically just keep kind of making the same stuff over and over again, like I don't know where your argument's coming from. Like, oh, he's just ripping off that 55 or like that movie from the 60s that no one's ever seen before but him. I just
mm,
read like he's got an article I think in the DGA Quarterly, which is the Directors Guild. Like it's a magazine that comes out maybe like 4 or 5 times a year, but it's him and Scorsese talking right before the Oscars. And I shit you not, I 95% of the films they were talking about, I don't think I've heard. Maybe I heard of, but I've never seen before. Like they were just geeking out over movies that were just like, never see that, never seen that. But then when you look at today's market and it's all a franchise and it's all sequels and sequels, and everybody's like, well, we want something different. I gotta be honest, like his stuff is still always very different, and you've
mm.
probably never seen whatever he's even alluding to,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
because that's the thing. I know a ton of like everybody's. I just want. Isn't there an original movie coming out of Hollywood these days than their original material? Yeah, of course there's original material, but at the same time, things are always going. I think things are always going to represent what you've seen before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just, and I'm sure we'll do, Paul Thomas Anderson, but he was a huge fan of Network, huge
Yeah.
fan of that whole world of the broadcast, and that kind of that inspired a little bit of Magnolia,
Mm-hmm.
and other stuff is, as long as it's inspired. Again, you're not blatantly ripping something off and just saying that's mine now. But I don't know, I think in this day and age it's hard to look at a Tarantino and not say that at the end of the day he's still doing his own thing and writing his own work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is, yeah. I mean, and I think with anything, it's going to be very difficult to see something, read a book or watch a TV show or anything without, naturally being, oh, that's like this, and making a comparison. Cause it's like, yeah, everything to some degree is just another retelling of, what is it? Something like everything is like three different stories. Like
Yeah,
that's
there's
it.
like
Yeah.
I guess the quote was always like there's only 7 stories in all of the world.
And that's
But I think that I was watching an interview with one of like a YouTuber, and he was talking to a comedian, and I think what was interesting, he said something like, I just did this cool, like crazy video. And once that video was done and we did this prank or this big thing, we're done. I'm out of ideas until we beat the pavement and really just think about it. Oh, and then there's another. Like, there's always another idea. There's always something that can be built. Like, music is still being made today. Have we not heard every single song, every love song, every song about anything? But there's always new music every single year.
Mhm.
So creatively, we're still finding ways to say probably a lot of the same thing, but repackaging it, redoing it in your own voice. And I think that's the most important part.
just, yeah, make it authentic, make it your own.
Yeah.
We- so for the three scenes, what do you think? Do you think we're gonna have each? We'll say the same one, or have an overlap?
It's very possible. I think there will be overlap. I won't say how many, but I
Mm.
will say there will be overlap. So
I
I figured we
think
do a 3, 2, 1 as your favorite and start at 3. And so if you want to go for it, man, yeah,
let's
let's
go.
hear
Let's
yours.
start from. What did you rank them? Like 1, 2, and 3?
I kind of rank them, but
Let's start
again,
with 3
it's
then. With
yeah,
the rank, right?
yeah, sure,
Or I don't know. 3, 2, 1.
yeah,
So okay, yeah. So I guess I'll start, and then you say what should you want to just say when I say it if that was yours too, or if we
sure,
overlap.
sure. If we do,
Okay, so I'm gonna this might surprise you actually, but I'm going to go with the finale at Rick's house in the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as
okay.
one of the three scenes. The whole I'm here, I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's work. Brad Pitt just looks at
Mm-hmm.
him like, nah, your name is dumber than that. So that whole thing, I mean, it was so, I mean, you want to talk about violent. I mean, that was not a very violent movie. And then all of a sudden, I mean, it was just saving up for it at that moment. And it was just, whoa. And I mean, we saw it in the theater together actually. And I just was like, this is nuts. And I mean, I am kind of
Mm-hmm.
lukewarm about other parts of the movie. As a whole, I don't think it's his best. I mean, it was an enjoyable movie. It went on a little too long, but man, that ending was just dynamite. And just the reimagining of like kind of the Manson family and I mean, and DiCaprio with a flamethrower. I mean, my God, it's just I mean, that was just awesome.
Yeah.
I just love that. And you got the dog and the dog food, and there was so many like little things where it's just like that's just a
There was
totally
a lot of that foreshadowing that I kind of liked. Like when you see it again and you've seen it like maybe 3 or 4 times, and it's just it's just really wild how they did, or how he kind of had all that foreshadowing going on right before. And I think even me and one of our friends, or one of our good friends, an actor buddy, we kind of knew, and I don't know if you did, like kind of going into this, like, oh, he's gonna Inglorious Bastards. He's gonna redo it. She's gonna live. Like, you know,
Mhm.
I thought. I don't know if you went into the theater thinking that.
I don't. I'm trying. See, and I told you this before. It took me a long time before I saw Inglorious Bastards. I actually didn't see it when
Oh,
it came
right, yeah.
out, so I'm trying to remember if I had seen that movie yet. Before, but no, I don't think. I
Well
honestly don't think.
then, but
Yeah, I
you've
didn't.
seen it since, or you've seen it now?
Oh no, I've seen it. Yeah, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah,
okay, okay.
I've seen it now. But either way, I don't think I knew that he was going to do. So when the Manson family showed up and that whole thing was happening and they didn't go to Sharon Tate's house, I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't really see it coming. You know, I mean, but I guess you should have though, because the whole Bruce Lee thing that happened earlier, like that wasn't really real. So he was
Yeah,
kind of doing
I
his own
think that,
version of
yeah,
things.
there was a lot of the fantasy of the whole thing. And I don't know if I watched something on YouTube, or I've seen some videos where people try to explain it or bring their own opinion, kind of this weird meta world. But I remember hearing someone say back when it was coming out, like they were like, yeah, it's Tarantino's fantasy Hollywood, if you will.
Hmm.
Like, this is how he, like, it's literally called Once Upon a Time. It's got a storybook feel to it. So it's this thing that he really enjoy, like it's that fantasy world that he really loved back then, and it started to sort of fade out, and everything, not in a mythological sense or in a fantasy kind of world, but that's the way he would see it, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fun ride, and I definitely think that scene, that ending, that climax for the movie is a pretty good representation of him as a filmmaker. I mean, it's funny, it's gruesome, it's over the top,
Oh yeah, it's
it's
wildly
just
over the top. I think that
it's
that's
wild.
another thing. Yeah.
So,
And
so
I don't think he's ever done anything where, especially with the violence, where it's been, yeah, it's just easygoing. No, it's going to be over the top for sure. But
mhm,
I agree. Like it has that weird, like, ooh, it's got a kind of cringy, violent feel, and it's funny at the same time, which
mhm.
not a lot of people can do.
Yeah. So, does that surprise you that I picked that scene as one of the three?
It does actually surprise me a little bit. Just knowing, I know you're bigger fans of, well, you're normally bigger fans of the earlier works of people.
That is
So
that is true.
it is kind of interesting.
I also
But at the
wanted to
same
try
time,
to
I
do
don't
some.
know if it is.
I also wanted to do some. I wanted to try to do something. I didn't want to pick like three scenes from one movie or something like that either. So
Oh
I
yeah,
tried to,
no, I don't have it. I don't have it that way
I
either.
tried to do kind of, uh, three different movies, three different scenes. Um,
Right.
but that being said, I don't know if I would have picked a scene from another movie, like like one of my other movies, and
Well, I'm
then
sure we could always hit like that bonus one. Like there's, for me,
yeah.
there's probably like two or three other bonus ones that I'm like,
Oh,
yeah, I
I
love
have,
that
yeah, I
too.
have a couple of honorable mentions in there,
Yeah,
but
right.
that's the thing. I don't know, and one of them is from what my number one. It's like, but it's like, would I still would have picked the Once Upon a Time scene because I just think that's just great. So, all right,
Yeah,
what you got for
no,
number
that
three?
is cool. So my number three is the very opening of Inglorious Bastards.
Okay,
Uh,
that's the Christoph Waltz in the house with the
that's
people underneath.
that's the Christoph Waltz, yep, in the house with the farmer and the kids that were hiding. Um, that scene to me, uh, well, first of all, like I said, it introduces Christoph Waltz into the world. Um, Not to mention that have no clue as to what the other dude's name was. I've looked it up probably numerous times. Like, oh yeah, and the farmer, I don't know his name. But I thought that that scene was probably one of the most intense things when I first saw it. And I don't think that I actually went to the theater to see Inglorious. I think I just waited for Netflix to have it on DVD. Um, and again, I can't remember if I watched it with roommates or it was just by myself. I just remember that I was hooked with the acting, with the way the dialogue was going. Like everything about it was just great, I thought.
Hmm.
And it really for movies nowadays, like again, and this is where Tarantino will divulge or he'll go a different way. Action, thrillers, horror, everything needs to wow us right at the beginning. Everything needs to just have start it with an action scene. Start it with this. Do the No, I'm going to start this movie where two people sit in a barn and talk for 15 minutes before anything happens. And I was mesmerized. I was at the edge of my seat actually. And all they're doing is talking. Now again, it's there's a lot of tension built in that scene, which I thought was great.
Yeah, that scene was very Tarantino. Like, I mean, that's another one that's like a perfect example of like his kind of thing because it's just this kind of very dialogue heavy, and you got the storytelling and this and that, and it just kind of meandering all along, and you're just like, wow, that's just building up the tension because the more they're talking, the more you're like, there's somebody underneath that floor, or is there, or what's going on, what's going to happen,
Hmm.
and you're just waiting for something to happen, and it's yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
because he's always very easy to just jump the gun and do something crazy, and Just like literally jumped, like, in the car in Pulp Fiction, and what's his name is talking to the guy in the back seat, and boom, the gun just goes off,
Oh
and
yeah,
his
it shoots
brains get
him.
splattered everywhere. And it's just like, gee, oh my god.
Of course, he doesn't disappoint in that scene because I mean, it's spoiler
Oh
alert. I mean, they
no.
start shooting up the floors. I
Oh
mean, it's
yeah.
like they massacred all the people that were under there. So, you're waiting 15 minutes for it, but yep, something definitely happens.
Something definitely happens, but I did find that to be, um and again, since this, again, we want to try to talk about the filmmaking world, or how we're seeing it through our eyes, or how that inspires. It inspires me sometimes, is to slow down, like sometimes. Now, I don't think he could do that on his first movie or second movie, or even like kind of today with the studio system. Again, everything needs to be bombastic and crazy in the first 2-3 minutes. We need to be scared right away. But I believe that there's something great about how good he was at building tension with that scene. And it's everything. It's the writing, it's the directing, it's the actors, it's how he cut it. It's so good. And I remember even saying to other people, I don't care if you watch the rest of the movie, but this opening scene is just so good.
Yeah, there was I actually, it's not on my list, but it was one of my honorable mentions, was the bar scene where I forget all the characters' names, but when I'm blanking on his name, the
Oh,
guy
yeah,
who
and Michael
plays
Fassbender, and
Fassbender, thank you. I was like,
yeah,
what? The
yeah,
guy that
yeah,
plays Magneto.
yeah,
When he gets found out that he's not really German, and they have a
right,
whole standoff, and they're pointing guns at each other's dicks, and
yeah,
just
right,
that
yeah,
was a great scene. I almost put that up because that was just like, oh man, like shit's gonna go down. For the same
yeah.
reasons, just very talky. Something's gonna go down. It's
Hmm.
gonna end up in a big shootout or something. So yeah, that was one of my almost made mention of it for
Yeah.
very similar reasons. Yeah, it was, and I was telling you recent that because when we were talking about Once Upon a Time, I had seen. I was trying to remember if I'd seen Inglourious Bastards before or after that. So it was within the last year that I saw it, and it was just so strange. Like I think when it came out, a lot of people were like, "Yeah, if you're into Tarantino stuff, like this just was not a good one for him, and you save yourself the time. It's not that." I was hearing things like that, so I just never got around to watching it, which doesn't
Mm.
make any sense because I mean I should just watch everything that he does. But and then when I finally saw it, I was like, well, what the fuck were these people telling me? Because this movie, I would say
Yeah.
that
Right.
that might be in my top three of the best stuff he's ever done. So
Maybe we'll do that at the end, because we kind of wanted to have the fun of doing the scenes, but we'll just say,
we'll
and
just say,
do
yeah.
rapid
But
fire
it's just
final.
like I was just
Yeah.
like it took me 10 years to see this movie, and I finally saw it. I was like, what's wrong with me? But yeah,
Yeah.
no, great movie, great scene.
All right. What's
Um,
your two?
So this one was tough for me because I wanted to say the Kill Bill Crazy 88, but I'm going to say the scene that follows that, where the bride fights
Hmm.
Oren Ishii in Kill Bill
Hmm.
Volume 1. And the reason I say that is because I think everybody that talks about Kill Bill will talk about that crazy 88 scene, like just how crazy that was, just how violent and just all the colors and everything. And it was so cool.
Hmm.
And I love that movie because of that scene. And then, she goes, Uma Thurman's got to go fight, kind of, it's like a video game. Like you gotta go fight the boss character now. And
Yeah.
she's going
Right.
against, Lucy Liu, and I'm like, how do you top what I just saw? Like that's nuts. And of course,
Hmm.
it's almost like the opposite of what you just saw. It's such a quiet and elegant and beautifully shot scene, and the fighting is so. It's not these crazy zooms and all these wacky camera angles. It's kind of like shot from afar, and it's all in the snow. And so when you see the blood splash on the
Hmm.
snow, it's
Right.
so like visceral, and yeah, and it was just such an elegant scene, and it left more of an impression on me. Like so every time I think of that movie, I always think of Lucy Liu with her head cut off, like the top of her head cut
Yeah.
off, and
Right.
saying that really was a Tori Hanzo sword.
Hattori Hanzo.
And
Hmm.
then and then you'll know what I'm talking about too. That freaking water fountain thing, like because they just it would like fill it with water and then dump the water. It's like
Oh
so
yeah, yeah,
iconic. Like I could
yeah.
I can hear it
Right,
in my head because he just has the camera just sitting there on that thing,
right.
like
Yeah,
while
he
they're in the
does.
background, and it's like, what the fuck is going on? But it was
Yeah,
so
no, yeah.
so stuff like that. It was like, yeah, I mean, when you do things like that, and I just remember like a water fountain, filling up with water and then dumping water. It's when you just
Hmm.
such a it leaves like an impression, and it's like
Yeah.
so there were a lot of things in that scene that I was like, yeah, man, this is pretty nails as far as
I think a lot. Yeah, I do, and it even goes to the very ending, and it's not on my list, but it definitely could have been, which is just the ending of the entire thing with her and David Carradine
mhm.
and Bill. The bride and Bill just talking for endless amounts, and again, it's sort of it would be a bonus thing because I just thought his analogy with the Superman and he's Clark Kent, and that's sort of what he is. You are always a killer, but you dress and disguise yourself as someone you're not. I was just
Mm.
the way that played out, or how he wrote that scene, and it's just so simple. There's no big, grandiose, crazy. Let's do a 10-minute fight scene between the two of them because it wasn't necessary. It wasn't
Mhm.
needed.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
it
think
was
the
a
same thing
very
how we ended volume one with Oranishi, where it's like, like swords touch, boom, 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 and then done. But the music too, and yeah, the way it was shot, ooh, it was gorgeous.
yeah, it was yeah. So I mean, I think I just throw that in there because it's like you got how you should have ended on 88. Like that was so crazy. So how do you even top that? How do you even keep going? But he did, and so I have an appreciation for that scene, and I do have an appreciation for. I mean, I'd say that's one movie. I mean, I don't feel like it's just one big long movie that they split into two. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's whatever. Well, I like Kill Bill 2 better. Well, no, it's
yeah,
volume
it's sort of
2.
like
It's
it's
not
kind of
it's continuation.
it's the same.
It'll be
Yeah.
like if he does volume 3, if he actually goes through and makes volume 3 his last film,
Is that a
which
rumor? Is that what he's supposed to do? I didn't even know
that's
that.
been the rumor for years, I think. The idea that Vernita Green's daughter is going to go after the bride.
Interesting. I tell you, when that movie came out, I remember when it came out, I was like, "Kill Bill, what a stupid name for it." So, and then it's like now it's like, oh man, it's one of his iconic movies. But it just at the time, I was like, "Kill Bill, that's the new Tarantino movie? What a dumb name!"
What a weird like really,
Like
yeah.
what? Okay, all right, I guess so. Um,
That's one of those I think I saw. Well, I definitely saw, I think, volume 2 twice, and I think I saw volume 1 twice as well. Because we were still in Fairfax when that movie came out. You might have been just coming back from LA, I think, or
I think
something.
so. What that was what 03, 04, something like that.
Yeah, I did the '03 like back in, I don't know if it was like summertime or fall, but then '04 came out, I think, in the springtime of like '04.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that sounds about right. So I guess I take it that was not on your list, or I don't know, or one of the scenes.
we'll wrap around to that. But my number 2 is the Reservoir Dogs Mr. Blonde ear cut scene.
Oh yeah, well that's like I think that would be
And
regardless of whether
yes,
it's your
yes,
favorite
it
or not.
is
That's going to be an iconic like
that.
that.
Yeah, exactly. And let me just explain too, because uh the again, I hadn't seen Reservoir Dogs until I got into college. And this was also right around the time that I guess Jackie Brown had already been out, but it wasn't really something people were really loving because it was just like that is obviously the most talky movie. A lot of people would even call that one of the more underrated Tarantino films because whether you agree with that or not, I still would go backwards and say, I just think the balls that this guy has to do something like that. And even though it's not even shown, to me, that was the way for Fincher to go and cut Gwyneth Paltrow's head off, like in Seven.
Yeah,
It paved that idea that what you don't see but just kind of hear, and that to me was oh, you don't have to show everything. You don't have to do that. And everything about Michael Madsen's character, the music, oh, he was about to like he's throwing the gasoline all over. Like that could have been that's a violent for the early 90s. They shot that in 91, 92, I think.
Yeah, the movie came
I
out in
think it
92, so
had
that was
people
probably shot in 91. Yeah.
like I guess it went to Sundance or whatever, but people were walking out after that point. Or I don't know.
Yeah.
I've heard things of that nature. Um, but again, you see violence on screen a lot, and keep in mind, I probably saw this movie right after I'd seen Saving Private Ryan or something, because that came out in '98, and that's one of the most gory films you'll ever see, heart wrenching scenes, and they show
Hmm.
you everything. This was again, it's just how he does it with fun poppy music, and and again, if we're talking about influences, this definitely had an influence on stuff I did in my movie. And you'll have to
Hmm.
watch it to find out what it is, but
I
to
I
be
know
able
what
to
you're
do
talking
that
about.
kind of stuff and get away, maybe get away with it's not the right word, but because it is so iconic, I've always thought of it as one of the best scenes he's ever done, because he didn't feel the need to go there and really show everything.
Hmm.
He knows when to show things and when not to show things, I think.
Yeah.
And that shows him as like, again, he did some movie called like The Last Birthday or The Last Thing or something like that, and it never got released. There's like a 40-minute version on YouTube, but this really was his first movie, and it just sort of shows you how, I don't know if he was a master of the craft right away, or if he's the genius that everybody says. I get a little with that word with films and with filmmakers, but
Hmm.
at the same time, when you look at that scene, I mean, the whole movie in and of itself, and again, opening up with the diner scene, we're just going to talk for like 15 minutes about Madonna's Like a Virgin.
Yeah.
But
And tipping.
but hey, we've done a lot of talking, and there's been obviously the violence and all that stuff that went into it. But I just found it to be a just kind of a crazy scene. It was just again, he's done so many of those, and it just sticks out in my head.
Yeah.
So
I think, and it's like if you asked, 100 people, the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of, iconic things in Tarantino movies, I'm pretty sure that would be in the top three. The Ear,
oh yeah,
Stuck in the
sure.
Middle with You, Michael Madsen, the
Hmm.
whole bit. And you're right. I mean, that was ballsy, because I'm sure if you're oh yeah, we're gonna have Stuck in the Middle with You, Steelers Wheel, this old '70s song, this minor, radio hit playing while he's cutting a ear up, and they're gonna be like, what? Why would you pick that song?
Yeah, I mean, and that song too, which is like when you have to go, and this is kind of a producer, like when you're literally. I remember with a couple songs that I was using for Psychos, and there was actually this thing of like, tell us if it's through a very violent scene, tell if it's being used for like a sex scene, tell if it's used for something
Mhm.
where people doing like drugs or they're drinking a lot of out, like they actually had things where they were saying there might be a clause or their management or their record like whatever it might be, yeah, we don't want that song being played during that. And that's now, and maybe this is more of the PC world coming through or
Yeah.
whatever it might be, but for a $1.2 million movie made by a first time director, for them to be like, and like they don't ask like, well, what's the song going to be used for, what's the scene that they're going to use, some dude's going to torture a cop and then cut off his ear, and okay, like sure,
Yeah.
I
Well,
guess
you
they
you
didn't.
you 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 bring up, yeah, it was probably a very different time back then. I mean, for all I know, like back then, they was like, who cares? Who's this guy? We're never gonna this thing's never gonna see the light of day, and they just
Yeah, that could be too.
and I mean they were like a one hit wonder anyway, so they were probably like, hey, we're just glad to get some exposure, get the song
Mhm.
back out there again. And it's funny too, because I think anybody that ever hears that song, they always think of that scene in Reservoir Dogs. So for my number one, I am going to roll with the scene in Pulp Fiction. What ain't no country I ever heard of? They speak English and what?
I knew it. I knew it. I knew
You
it.
knew that was going
Yeah.
to be my number one?
I think I did. Well, when I thought of Pulp Fiction, when you were like, you probably know it, I was like, well, it's probably going to be Pulp Fiction. I was like, well, I think it's going to be what? I think it's going to be Ezekiel. Whatever. What's the
I
number?
mean, of course, yes. That's the so
Yeah.
it's the apartment scene when Jules and Vincent go and they get the case back from Marcellus Wallace. You got the
Right.
whole. Everyone knows, yes, it's Ezekiel 2517. But I mean, that's just like an icing on the cake for me. I mean, that scene is just awesome, and I mean, that was like kind of when we were talking about, we both, I guess, saw Pulp Fiction was our first like kind of intro into Tarantino, and just seeing, because that scene's somewhat early in the movie. I mean, I think it's like in the first half hour or something like that. And I'm just listening to the dialogue and I'm like, this is just amazing. Like, I'm just enthralled with what is going on and what they're talking about. And you got, Samuel L. Jackson, he's just clearly fucking with them. He's like, let me take a bite of your burger. And it's just like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God. And then you got, Travolta in the background. He's not saying a word. He's just poking around, smoking cigarettes, just not saying, and it's just like, man, this is just so like, it was just so wild. And then, and just so many interesting choices. I mean, it's 7 a.m. They're eating hamburgers. That's odd.
Yeah.
I mean, you just the whole fucking with them eating the burgers and stuff. I
The
mean,
Big Kahuna Burger.
the big Kahuna
Yeah.
burger, and the thing opens with they knock on the door and they stand there talking about the foot. I think they're finishing up the foot massage uh,
Yeah.
story, and they're sitting there at the door. The camera's just behind them, and they're standing at the door for like 30 seconds before it's open, and then it's just this little apartment. So it's like, what the hell's going on the other side? Like, why did it
Mm-hmm.
take so long? And do they hear these two guys outside talking about foot massages? It's just yeah, there was just so much to like about that. And then you have the miracle, the guy comes out, shoots them and misses. And
Yeah.
um,
Right.
actually, I might be mixing that up though. I think, doesn't it just cut? Oh no, that is part of it, and then they leave with the guy that gets shot in the face, right? Because then they end up
Yeah.
coming back to the scene later to show the guy.
Yeah. They
Fighting.
take him with them, but yeah, he gets shot.
So
So
I pulled the scene up.
so then Mr. Wolf has to come.
Right. So I pulled the scene up off of YouTube just to kind of refresh my memory with everything that happens in it. And there's one thing I noticed. I just wanted to make a mention of this. So when they enter the apartment, Samuel Jackson kind of walks over to the guy. He calls him flock of seagulls. The guy's sitting on the couch, and he kind of says, "Hey, don't get up. Stay comfy." And if you look at
Mm-hmm.
I'm blanking on the guy's name, Brett, but the guy that plays him, he's been in
Frank Whaley.
Frank Whaley. Thank you. Yeah, because he's been in I think he's been in a bunch of Tarantino movies actually. I want to say, well, he was in like a lot of
Yeah,
indie
like
movies.
little bits
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, right.
So if you look at his eye line, so they do a little crossing access thing where he's looking to camera left or right, sorry, and so is Samuel Jackson. So it looks like there was an access break there, and then it's corrected when Samuel Jackson, when Jules like walks over and then starts,
Mm-hmm.
talking to Frank Whaley about the Big Kahuna Burger. But if you look at that, it's sort of like an odd like little thing, and I'm like, they made. I think that was a continuity thing that they did. So even Academy Award winning movies, even Tarantino movies, they make mistakes too. So I just thought that was a little interesting
Oh,
thing that I just never noticed. I've seen that scene a bunch of times and I never noticed it
yeah.
until that time.
Well, but I do think like going into that scene, it's to dive a little deep again. It just the whole movie kind of revolves around like the start of that scene, whether it's like again Tarantino taking, because we all know that that's not the verse, that's not like the Bible verse or how it goes. So he was taking creative liberties even back then and going, I'm just changing this to what I want.
Just gonna make it work. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to make it my own, and that's how I'm going to do it. Then it's got the whole, what's in the briefcase and you can get online, and I'm sure there's tens of thousands of people talking about what's in the briefcase, what is flashing gold into the face, and oh, we're good, we got what we need. And then what was the deal with not getting shot? Like, is that a miracle? Did this?
Yeah. There was a lot going on in that scene. I mean,
I mean that sets a lot up for this entire movie, which again don't really get a lot of answers, but at the same time, hey, whatever you think it might be, I guess
It could
maybe
be,
it
yeah. I mean,
is.
they say what Marcellus Wallace's soul, or it's, who knows what. It's but yeah, it's a cool little Easter egg, and I just love. I mean, I think that's my favorite role of Samuel L. Jackson. I mean, English motherfucker, do you speak
Yeah.
it? I mean, I mean, it was just, I just everything about
That made him that became, that scene right there just became his Al Pacino. Like that's
yeah.
what turned him into the character of Samuel L. Jackson, like for other movies. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's yeah. So that
That's
would
what's
be
like any movies in, motherfucker. You better say it. Like you have to.
you
Like
gotta say it.
we're counting on it. That's
Because
why we
they're
pay you a
yeah,
million
because you
dollars.
they brought him, they did that movie Snakes on a Plane, and then they did a test audience screening, and then the whole audience was like, we never heard Samuel Jackson say these motherfucking snakes. And so they had to bring him back
Yeah.
to just do that one scene. I'm tired of these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane. Oh
Yeah.
man,
And
fantastic.
that's how that's how that whole thing I think got started. And hey, it really did get his, I mean, not just that in that line, but it was a career defining kind of thing.
Oh
Because he
yeah.
was also up. I remember reading or seeing behind the scenes, he was up for playing the cop that was helping Tim Roth. Like, you got to become an actor in
Oh,
Reservoirs, you
okay.
know? Like he was up for that role, I think. And I don't know if Quentin didn't like cast him because I don't remember exactly. It could have been a scheduling thing. Who knows what it
Hmm.
was? But yeah, he was like, "Yeah, I'm up for doing this role." And
Yeah.
then it just kind of went back around, and that's when he cast Samuel for Pulp Fiction. And obviously the rest is history because now, Samuel Jackson is in most Tarantino films.
Yeah.
So
I think they must have known each other before, because Samuel Jackson, I mean, I don't know how involved Tarantino was in True Romance, but Samuel Jackson like had a little bit part in that. Because something Gary Oldman
right.
shoots him in like the
Yeah.
beginning or whatever. So they must have
Yeah.
maybe
With a very
Tarantino know.
vulgar scene that Tarantino did,
Yeah.
which,
But
that's what he does. So,
that's what he does. So what do you got for number one?
all right. So I'm going to go backwards, man. I'm sorry. I'm too big of a karate, kung fu, martial arts person. Crazy 88 is obviously my
Yeah. Well,
favorite.
it was, yeah, it's I mean, as I said, it was a struggle between that and the Oranishi one, and I was like, but it's right there. I mean, it is, talk about iconic scenes. I mean, just the look and feel of that. It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's a great choice. So,
I mean, again, I think they had a little bit of behind the scenes maybe on the DVD when it first came out, but then there's like they came out with this Blu-ray. I guess it was all of his movies with no, maybe it didn't have J. I don't remember exactly, but I have it, and there's one whole disc related to Tarantino and behind the scenes and interviews and blah 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 blah. This whole sequence took them like a month to do. And yeah, and it's long in the movie. Don't get me wrong, it is long in the movie, but it's also like I did an entire movie, you did an entire movie in half the time it took him to actually film the Crazy
right.
88 scene.
Mhm.
Which to have that kind of patience, to have that and the wherewithal and the production design and the blood. Oh my god! Like, how do you keep track of this from day to day to day to day to day?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty impressive, I mean, wow, yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing. And that, I mean, when I saw that, I mean, that's what kind of made me, um if we were going to do top three, Kill Bill is in my top three easily. And it
Right.
just, I mean, I already liked the movie, but when I got to that scene, I was like, holy shit. Like, that was just, yeah, I mean, there's just so much going on, and I can't even imagine, yeah, like you say, keeping track of everything. I mean, oh my God,
Like, I mean, I try. I have a fight scene in my movie, and yeah, I don't have a lot of like trained fight or background martial arts actors or whatever. It lasts for maybe 10, 15 seconds, 20 seconds at best, I think.
Mm,
And it and that took a day of trying to do, doing the choreography, figuring it all out, making people are safe because we didn't have actual stunt people. So, we had to do that. And then we had to do it again on set and we had to figure out, all right, you're throwing this punt and this is how this is going to go. Oh my God. Like it's just kind of mind blowing that scene, uh, because I know that Tarantino, I think what's the bar called? I think like House of Blue Leaves or something. I think that's what
Um,
it's called. But there's a samurai film called that, and it's about a
mm,
woman that's on revenge, or she's going on a rampage. And the Japanese way of the samurai films was always over the top. You cut off someone's arm and it's not the way it really happens, but blood sprays everywhere. So there was always his own, that was his inspiration for the ending of Kill Bill Volume 1.
oh yeah,
So
for sure. And I know exactly when you said blood spraying on. I'm just thinking of the woman getting her arm cut off. It's just
yeah,
it's
and
like
then it
a
happens
hose.
everywhere.
It's like oh my
Yeah,
god.
but I remember seeing that stuff like USA back in the day. I remember being even I guess I was in grade school, middle school, or something like that. My buddy Evan and I like, oh, did you watch Chop Saki Saturday? I was like, yeah. You see that samurai film that happened at noon? Like they would play like old school like
Mhm.
I guess they were like Chop Saki Japanese kind of films, or then they'd go and do Chinese and kung fu type films. So they kept mixing it up, and I was like, "How are they playing this at noon on a Saturday?" Like, you go from like watching Saved by the Bell and cartoons to just the most violent things in the world, and it was great. We loved it.
Because I guess they didn't think anybody would be watching. Kids would have. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
But yeah, go on your bike, go play outside, do something. But no, back then, like that was my world too, because I actually sought out other, like I said, even as a kid, I would seek out the stuff that Quentin Tarantino was talking about as inspiration for like Kill Bill and all that stuff. Like
Yeah.
I had a DVD, or I have a VHS 4-pack of old school Jet Li and Jackie Chan movies and all these things. Like it, I've always been like the biggest martial arts kind of fan. So just seeing that sequence, it was truly just great. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I can't, oh God, dude, I really want to be like, yes, and then the last scene too. But again, just the spectacle of the Crazy 88 scene to me.
Yeah.
It's
No,
gotta
it's. I mean,
it takes it for me.
it's a good job.
Not to
Yeah.
mention you had what's her name? Not Oranishi, but she she had to go against the schoolgirl I'm
Oh
losing
yeah,
her
with the
name.
mace,
Like,
the
yeah, she had the
swinging
mace,
mace thing.
like, yeah, because that's sort of like, ooh, you got to deal with the boss, like the head henchman before, like it's the video game. You got to deal
Yeah,
with this
right.
one
You
before you
gotta
get to
get through
deal
all
with the
these people
boss.
before you get to the boss level. Yeah.
So I'll do a 4-3-2-1. 4-3-2-1 is Once Upon a Time, Inglorious, Pulp Fiction, Kill Bill. So
Oh,
those are my top.
you're doing
I'm just
in
saying those are
the
my
four.
top films of his. Sure, there's other scenes and other things I liked, but I think that would be my top four.
So you did what? Once upon a time.
Once
Wait,
Upon a
say 'em again.
Time, Inglorious Bastards, Pulp Fiction, and then Kill Bill.
So I would say Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill would be my number one and two, and number three. It's tough, but I think I would pick Inglorious Bastards over Reservoir Dogs. But that would be like my four. Some
Yeah,
good
guys.
stuff.
Hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, we'll catch you on the next one.
We'll see you on the next one.